Hello ratbags, it's Jade Games. Welcome to a very special Ark Survival Evolved video. Today we're going to be discussing Extinction, the third and final DLC. Originally scheduled for spring, it's looking likely it won't actually come out until the summertime. We're going to be discussing that and why I know that for certain, as well as really looking at the last DLCs, what they offered, what was really good about them, what wasn't so good about them, and why Wildcard really need to do something special for this final DLC to see off the main base game. If you don't know, it's titled Extinction. It is going to be set on Earth and it's going to be a little bit different, hopefully, from what we've seen before. So come with me as we discuss all the DLCs and what we really want to see happen for the next one. Ark Survival Evolved, by the time the third and final DLC comes out in the summertime, will have been around for 3 years. June 2015 was when it came out on PC. It quickly came out in December time on Xbox One of that same year, and then December 2016 it came out on the PlayStation 4. So I want to talk about a few things that make Ark Survival Evolved good and great, and what makes the certain pieces of the DLC that followed good and great, as well as taking a look at what wasn't so good. For me, running around the Ark, taming dinosaurs, exploring, gathering resources, it was really different and unique. I first played it on the Xbox, where you just didn't have a lot of choice in them types of games. It was one of the first real open world survival games we'd seen. So it was amazing to go around and have a hardcore experience. And if you don't realise by now, Ark is a hardcore game. With the gathering and grinding of resources, with the taming times it takes, with the build up and keeping your tribes alive on PvP servers particularly, it really is a hardcore game. And that is definitely one of its selling points. It makes it more interesting, it makes it more unique. It is not Minecraft with just pretty graphics and dinosaurs. It is a very much its own beast. The diversity in the creatures, the way they kept adding more content and having lots of choice in what you were doing in terms of going for what types of different creatures and animals, was always one of the main focuses of the game. Now the island itself, the map that you first get, the base game, I gotta say it's not my favourite map. My favourite map is some of the free DLC created by modders, and that was the centre map, which got turned into an official DLC. But the island does have lots of good points. It's got all the biomes you would expect. The snow biome, you've got swamps, you've got mountainous areas, you've got plains. So in terms of scope, in terms of running around and experiencing new environments, I really like the fact that the island does have a bit of everything in it. The centre map is a little bit more water based. It does have a lot more water in it, and it is expected that you're going to be using boats and rafts a lot more to get across all the different islands. And while Ragnarok is amazing, Ragnarok's got some open plains on it and it's just gorgeous in the highlands, and the new desert area was pretty cool as well. It does feel just a little bit empty. The biomes are just too large and it's too big a map to get across. But I reckon that was the idea, that was the scope the modders wanted with that, to make it really feel realistic and have this huge map that you would have to use dinosaurs really, really smartly to get across and achieve and get progress in the game. So that's taken care of what I think about the main arc and what I think about the free maps, and I wanted to discuss that because that matters for what I want from the last piece of DLC. In terms of the items, in terms of the equipment and dinosaurs, obviously the base game has got over 120 dinosaurs, creatures, or whatever it is. It's got so many engrams. It's always going to be the base thing that you're going to go to think about what Ark really is. So there's some of the plus points, there's some of the things. I could go on forever talking about some of the good things about Ark Survival Evolved main game and some of the negatives, but this isn't that type of video. I just want to give you a refresh and where I'm coming from when I'm measuring stuff like DLC. So Scorched Earth came out, and obviously it came out during the early access period. They needed the money to help fund the rest of the game. They were desperately running short due to lawsuit, and they wanted to see if they could implement these types of different DLCs seamlessly into the main game. Now Scorched Earth created a massive amount of hype, and it has to be said, Wildcard do that very well. I've gone on length to talk about the fact that they generate maybe too much hype. But Scorched Earth did look amazing. The wyverns appearing, these strange creatures we'd only seen tiny little bits of glimpses of in explorer notes that they were releasing. Scorched Earth is a pretty looking map. It has got that desert, that canyon feel. It really does have that feeling that you're gonna die if you don't get hold of some water very soon. But that is also one of its biggest problems. It didn't have enough diversity. We got that it was meant to be a harsher environment. We got that it was meant to be this desert area, and it was meant to be unique and look completely different from the island. However, when you compare it to the island and in terms of the biomes, in terms of the selection, it's a pretty simplistic map. Apart from the desert area and apart from the canyons, there isn't really that much to go and explore and experience. One thing Scorched Earth did do very well though was in adding some of the ruins, and the ruins really helped flesh out a map for me. They really create this intrigue or this mystery about where that map is or what that map was, who's in that map, who lived on that map. I love seeing ruins, and Scorched Earth definitely had some of the better ruins. I preferred the ruins and the stuff that was running around or lying around in the desert more than I did Aberration. It did have a good selection of more engrams, and of course we was excited about playing with flamethrowers and trying out all the new saddles for the new creatures. And particularly things like having a wind turbine, that was really interesting, and I love the idea of them adding more unique items, more craftable items that aren't just reskins of separate or different items in the past. So in terms of the items and the engrams, they did pretty well adding them different types of things you've got, like the boomerang and the flamethrower. When you look at the mechanics of it, and that's what they try and do, it's not just a case of having a brand new map and a few new items, it's about putting a new game mechanic in there. And obviously the main focus of the game is taming. Now you might not necessarily do much taming. I don't think I've even tamed half the creatures in Ark Survival Evolved legitimately. For me, I just like running about and having an adventure and exploring. That's how I play the game. Now in terms of creatures, Scorched Earth had 12 unique creatures, but only 7 of them creatures are actually rideable. And one of them 7 creatures didn't come out on release of Scorched Earth. The Phoenix came out much time after full release of the DLC. And this is what happens in the next DLC as well. We do get a bunch of creatures, but there's not a lot of them we can actually ride and do useful things with. Scorched Earth's main thing was to go and get a wyvern. That was the whole mechanic of the game. That's what was going to make it interesting, and it was certainly a challenge. Trying to do it on your own, going into the wyvern trench and trying to pick one up was one of the hardest things you could do. A sense of achievement and accomplishment in doing that, whether it was on your own or in a tribe, was massive, and the ways that people would do that to get the milk and breed them, it was a different mechanic and people really liked it. It had something unique rather than just knocking the creatures out and then just putting food in them. It really made something interesting that you had to go and first steal the eggs. And when it came to fighting the boss, the Manticore, it was a unique creature for sure. The way it was flying around, the mix, the damage it did, it made an interesting encounter. You really did need your wyverns if you wanted to succeed, and making sure you had much use of some of the weapons like the guided rocket missile launcher. What I found wrong with Scorched Earth, or what I didn't like, was that after a few weeks it became just a little bit too light and a little bit too barren. The ruins were cool, and some of the ruins you could go and explore, and some of them led into the caves, but there were only 3 caves at the time. And apart from getting a wyvern, once you'd done that, there wasn't a lot to do on the map. And because it didn't have a big variety of biomes, it got pretty boring running around just looking at the desert environment. But I'll give him a pass, as this DLC was created in early access way a year before the actual full release of the game. But going over this and then going over Aberration, I think this slightly shades Aberration as the better DLC. And we're going to be talking about that next. Why? Aberration had almost as much hype as the main game. It's one of the most viewed trailers from Ark Survival Evolved. Now, it had its woes. It was meant to launch much earlier than it did, and when it did launch, it had a bunch of technical problems. Just like Scorched Earth did, but Scorched Earth was in the early access period and you kind of expected it maybe to have some issues. However, the launch of it wasn't very successful, and there were way too many bugs for something that was meant to be a full-fledged DLC and had already been delayed to be worked on more. Now, Aberration had some really unique creatures, and the idea of being in space and having this mad reapers and this environment where you couldn't fly was something pretty special. What you're seeing in the background is me mucking around with a flying creature to see what it would be like. But that was one of its main draws for me. I love the fact that you couldn't technically have flyers on the map. Now, one of the better things about Aberration was they did add even more unique resources to gather and harness, and that was set it apart from Scorched Earth. The gas veins had more of it in it. We had these magic mushrooms that you could go and utilise. You had to pick up certain gems. It wasn't just Ark putting a few dinosaurs on a new map. They really tried making sure the environments were useful and they had lots of things to go and gather and resource and craft. I love the effect of the mushrooms. I thought that was really unique and interesting, and I love the fact that there's different types of them. Another fantastic aspect of Aberration was initially the look of it, the feel of it. It was really different, being enclosed in, having this dangerous environment above ground where you couldn't go in the daylight was really cool. But that really got old even quicker than it did on Scorched Earth. Running around just looking at very dark walls, having dark caves, there really wasn't that much area to play in. It was one of the biggest problems, and we noticed it when I set up my servers. Time and time again we had to have discussions with people because there were just too many people built up in the same area at the start. There really wasn't enough biomes added to the Aberration map. Where Scorched Earth was at least open and you could build anywhere, it just lacked different biomes. But I did feel the map let the DLC down. It needed more space to go and explore, and it needed more difference of biomes, not just the bioluminescence and not just the rock drake trench. There was so much unused space on the surface, and I understand they wanted the mechanic to be that it had to be hard to go up top. But for the most part, you don't need to go up top that much. And so it just comes this huge dead space that no one is ever going to use, and that isn't a very good game design. Aberration did have some decent creatures added to it though, and they were probably some of the most unique ones we've seen. Obviously the Reapers were pretty special, and the way that you had to get a Reaper baby was pretty unique too. But again, apart from the Reapers, just like it was for the Wyverns and Scorched Earth, the rest of the creatures were pretty simple. And again, the same thing, it didn't actually have enough creatures for you to ride. One thing it definitely had right with the creatures was the Nameless, the way that they would spawn and take you out if you was in certain areas and didn't have the light. That was a unique game mechanic, and I really loved that. But once you got a few light lantern pets, it became a bit easier to just get around, and it wasn't so much an issue or a problem. Out of the 15 creatures that are on Aberration, you can only ride 6 of them. That is a really poor amount considering the game is meant to be about exploring and taming lots of creatures. And while the lantern pets are cute and they had a really interesting boss fight, it really let itself down not having more choice or more difference in the creatures you can ride. Now, without all these DLCs, of course you have the main base dinosaurs added to the game as well. But Aberration cut out quite a few of the ones from the islands that you could actually have. And with the reduction in flyers, it really did feel like Aberration was missing a hell of a lot more creatures than it should have. And the creatures themselves, they were just reskins of dinosaurs we'd seen. You've got the Basilisk, but it's just a great big Titan boa really, and Ravagers were just reskins of direwolves. The only really unique creatures that I felt really made a difference in terms of the way that you use them and mechanics wise, the Roll Rat, which is a bit useless really, but at least it's really different in terms of its attack, the way it moves across the map. And even though the Reapers move like T-Rexes and it still felt like just a reskin or replacement for them, it was different enough with its attacking abilities and the way that you had to tame them or get hold of one that made it really unique and different. But out of 15 creatures, only having them 3 really be something special, I don't think that's good enough for a piece of DLC that you're spending $20 on. Like I said, the lantern pets were cute and they were good enough, but you had them on your shoulder most of the time, so you rarely saw them unless you was playing third person all the time. And it just felt a little bit too gimmicky. Now there are a few caves on the map, but again it suffers same as Scorched Earth. Compared to the island or the centre map, which has loads of different caves and things to explore, it was really lacking. And Aberration didn't have as many environmental things to go and explore as well, believe it or not. Yes, it's got these great big massive pieces of metal, and apart from this shining skull that you see here from this huge dinosaur, there isn't that many sort of Easter egg style things for me. The big huge metal structures were cool, but they didn't really feel like the ruins that I'd encompassed or encountered in Scorched Earth. It didn't make me feel like the environment had been lived in that much more than I thought. I still felt much more that Scorched Earth was a map that I believed in rather than Aberration. Now one of the biggest letdowns was the rock drakes. They really were just reskins of wyverns but had been nerfed. Now Aberration was meant to subvert and warp the creatures you knew. That's why, you know, rock drakes can't fly. They're meant to be like that because of the way that you can't go into the atmosphere. So I get that, I understand the need for that. The Basilisk is exactly the same as a Titan boa. You need to drop eggs for it and tame it. The crabs are exactly the same taming method as the rock golems. You have to hit it on the head. Do you see where I'm going with this? There are lots of repeats of the same mechanics we've seen. I know it must be hard to really put a whole brand new system in place for DLC, but that is definitely one of the things that I think they need to improve on for the last bit. Maybe I'm being too harsh, maybe that's what you should expect from DLC, but I've played some amazing DLC in the past from games, and they have really changed and subverted what I know about that game. It really made me believe I'm paying for something that is extra content, not just recut content. And I'll just finish off with the boss fight. In all honesty, I never even got that far legitimately. I still haven't even done it in a cheaty mode taking on Rockwell. Aberration flopped hard for me, even quicker than Scorched Earth. I got bored of it really quickly. And that's indicated as well by the amount of drop off from players playing the game too. But I have seen enough of the Rockwell fight to look at it and think it's pretty unique and interesting, and it definitely adds another unique flavour in terms of boss fights to the game. And the Aberration cutscene is absolutely amazing, which of course leads us to Extinction. So let's wrap up exactly what I think about the DLCs. Both Scorched Earth and Aberration really lacked enough dinosaurs or creatures. Lots of them felt like reskins, and particularly with Aberration, it felt like they just cut and pasted a lot of the creatures and a lot of the same systems over from the old game. The maps have always looked pretty at first and have looked interesting and wondrous, but they quickly become very old because either they've not got enough variety in them or they're actually just really small and compact. In terms of items and unique game mechanics, Aberration did at least have the idea that you had to be careful of, toxic gases, and the light system was something pretty good that I liked as well. But on Scorched Earth you didn't have any of that, you just had to be careful of storms, and that got really old quickly as well, having to sit there for 10 minutes waiting for a storm to go past. I like things to be hard, what I don't like is just to be hard for the sake of it and just take up my time. Make it unique, make it interesting. The items were really cool in the game in terms of the climbing picks in Aberration, and in terms of some of the weapons that you could use in Scorched Earth I thought were really interesting, and I definitely want to see more of that. So let's cut to what I want to see from Extinction. More creatures. Give us real creatures to ride. I don't want just 15 or 20 creatures. I want to see a real whole-scale change. Yes, Aberration did have different variations, the glow-in-the-dark dinosaurs, but let's face it, no one plays Ark in the dark. As soon as it goes dark, we all turn our gamma up, or if you're on your own server, you've probably made it really short. It made a lot of the additions they did with Aberration redundant. So when they add the creatures for Extinction, which I'm sure they've already done, I really hope they're giving us more creatures, and they're giving us creatures that we can ride. I also don't want the creatures to be cut and paste jobs. I don't want them to just be reskins. I also want some new mechanics for the main creatures. Now in Aberration, you're meant to believe that the Reapers are the main sort of creature to get hold of. But in terms of what you use, on a daily basis, it's the Rock Drake that becomes the main creature. And the Rock Drake is just a reskinned wyvern. The method of taming it and the way its abilities run, it is just that. I don't know many people that have played Aberration and are really using their Reapers on a daily basis, running around the whole map. It's the Rock Drakes that we go to, just like it's the Wyverns we go to in Scorched Earth. Now Extinction's meant to be set on Earth. It looks like it's meant to be set in Earth hundreds, thousands of years after the destruction or the fall of Earth. So I expect there to be loads of different types of ruins and not just massive giant structures. I want there to be character and story. They've done a really good job with Scorched Earth and later on adding smaller ruins to the island map. And I want them to carry on doing that with the final DLC. I also want them to add more story. They bigged up massively that there was going to be so much more story for Aberration, and it was just more Explorer Notes. And yes, I know Explorer Notes lead to it being a story if you read them all and you take real good heart in it, but I think there'd be scope for adding some small cutscenes. Maybe they can trigger it when you tame something for the first time, or you hatch something that you trigger a cutscene. Maybe there can actually be voice Explorer Notes running as you go and explore it, something called Boom Art. I've not spoke much about story because it isn't its main focus. There isn't that much story unless you really go for the Explorer Notes and find it yourself. But I think it'd be really cool if they had voice activated Explorer Notes that led and told you stuff about something that was happening. Maybe they could be mysterious ghost voices, maybe they'd just be automated computer voices, but something like that to really lend itself more to a feel of a story and a cinematic feel. I also want there to be more caves and more places to explore, more dungeons, more underground places, more high up places. It needs something else to be running around and doing. In terms of the gameplay, and this is probably a criticism levelled at Ark overall, there needs to be more as well for people to do in PvE. Apart from going and taming the dinosaurs and maybe getting ready for boss fights, your dinosaurs all just sit in big huge barns and you never use half of them. Recently on the Ark mobile version they've implemented a quest system. It's very basic, it's like go and kill 10 certain creatures, go and gather 50 of this. I think they could add that to the main game. That would make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more things to do. I'd love there to be new little challenges that popped up where you had to go and do a certain thing or gather certain resources and you got some XP for it, or you got a little extra reward. If they can do that for the mobile version, why is it not in the main game already? Another aspect I really want them to focus on, which I've not mentioned, is the building. Aberration was a massive letdown in terms of the building that you could do. Scorched Earth had a brand new building material, adobe. It made it interesting, it made it cool. I was really disappointed to see they didn't add a custom tile set for Aberration. The building pieces are exactly the same. Apart from the tree platforms or the cliff platforms, there is no real unique building pieces, and that was really disappointing. Scorched Earth had the adobe stuff, and that really lent itself to making builds and bases look interesting. So for Extinction, I really hope everything's different. I want them to go full out. I don't want it to be stone. I want it to be, well, it's still going to be stone, but make it look different. I don't know exactly what they're going to add to it or what they're going to do, but it'd be really interesting to see more unique craft sets. I want to see completely different types of walls in use, whether they have practical solutions or not. Maybe they will be harder to break into, so it helps with the PvP aspect. Maybe they won't. Maybe it'll just be about cosmetic items. Pixar has been doing a fantastic job of that. And although it's a much simpler game, they've got loads of different tiles and building sets in it. So I really want the Extinction DLC to have much more. In terms of the items, I think they've pretty much done a good job in adding how many items. If you add too many to the whole mix, it does make you, spend more time working out what stuff is, and that just makes the game longer for no real reason. So adding a few additional items is pretty good. But I still would like them to add a little bit more. But I still think they could rename a lot of the items and a lot of the resources. That is the kind of cut and paste jobs I don't mind seeing, because it still makes the game really fresh if there aren't the same berries called the same berries, and you are gathering new resources rather than just the same old wood, polymer, etc. The thing with that is, though, it has to fit in with the rest of the game because of the way the networks are open and you can travel across. So it's probably asking a bit too much for them to go wholesale and change everything. But definitely I'd like to see even more resources like they added in Aberration. I want there to be mini events as well, mini bosses. There are alpha versions in the game and they're the kind of type of creatures that offer that mini boss sort of mentality. But I think that the game does have scope to add smaller bosses to it. A feature that was cut out of Ark a long time ago and we've not heard anything about it since has been Boss Wars. And in Boss Wars they were meant to release a certain boss or event and players would go and fight over that boss. They would be mini boss versions of like the Megapithecus, the Dragon, the Broodmother, and whoever won the battle, whoever managed to claim it or tame it, would be able to use it for a certain amount of time. I love that idea and I want them to really try and put that into the Extinction DLC. They also need to work on the rewards that you get as well. The tech tier stuff that you got, again, it was only just a couple additions added to what you already had. Now it doesn't mean I want an advantage over people, but I still would expect there to be more items and more rewards in terms of the tech tier if that's what they're going for. And in terms of the taming mechanics, Aberration had it spot on with something brand new in terms of the Reapers, but far too many of the other ways were just cut and paste, easy simple jobs. In general, Ark DLC looks pretty, it works well, you're really excited, you'll play it to death for the first few weeks, but over the course of a month people just drop out of that DLC like no tomorrow. Scorched Earth servers were a ghost town a few months later after full release, and it's looking likely that Aberration is going to be the same. So Extinction needs to have more in it. If it's going to be the last DLC, if it's going to be something that we're going to play for a while to keep us interested alongside all the other stuff, the whole package of Ark, it really has got to push the boat out with more creatures, more defined environments, and have more interesting mechanics in it. So there you go, that is my thoughts and feelings about Extinction, what I want from them to add. On a side note, things they've spoken about in the past, they said they wouldn't add, like NPCs, I would think would be interesting to have on Extinction. It'd be pretty cool to see some NPCs. As ever, these are just my opinions and it's based a little bit on what you guys have told me in Discord and what we've spoken about in comments on YouTube. But you leave your opinion down below. What did you think of the original DLCs? What do you want from Extinction? I am Jade Plays Games. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you ratbags for another Ark talk video very soon.